The next type of quadrilateral that we're going to look at are parallelograms. If you remember, parallelograms we talked about really briefly is opposite sides are parallel. So that means these two sides right here, these are parallel, and then also these are parallel. Okay, now we're going to learn some more other properties about parallelograms. Okay, this piece here, we're going to just go ahead and skip. And we're going to come up with the general conclusion first. Okay, so if you have a parallelogram, then the three properties that we want to talk about are the opposite sides are going to be congruent. What that means is this side and this side will have the same length, and then this side and this side will also have the same length. The next thing is that opposite angles are congruent. So that means the angles that are across from each other also have the same measure. So that means this angle and this angle are the same. And then this angle and then this angle also have the same measurement. And the last property is that consecutive angles are supplementary. If you remember, supplementary means that angles add up to 180 degrees. So consecutive ones are the angles that are next to each other. So that means this angle and this angle, if you add them together, they will add up to 180 degrees. If you also take this angle and this angle, those will also add up to 180 degrees. Or you could also take this one and this one that will also add up to 180 degrees. Okay, let's take a look at a couple examples on the next page. So first question says, we want to find this missing angle. Okay, if this angle is 98 degrees, one of the properties says that opposite angles are congruent. So this question mark also has to be 98 degrees. Now let's look at the sides. I'm looking for this question mark. The second property that we learned is that opposite sides are congruent. So if this is 23, this is the side opposite, this is also 23. Now this 10 is here as just an extra piece that we don't need. If I wanted to figure out what this one was, then I would need to use that 10. Okay, on some of the problems, what you might want to do is draw yourself a picture. So it says we have a parallelogram WXYZ. So let's draw a picture of a parallelogram and let's label it. Here's W, here's X, Y, and Z. Remember, it doesn't matter where you start, but you want to go in order. Measure of angle W is 42 degrees, so this one is 42. X is 138. Y is going to be 42. And then we want to find this measure right here. Well, there's two ways you can do it. The simplest way is, remember, we talked about opposite angles are congruent. So remember, this one and this one have to be the same, so that means Z has to be 138 degrees. The other way you can do it is, remember, we also talked about that third property, consecutive angles are supplementary. That means these two add up to 180, so you can use these two ideas and do it the same way. So there's multiple ways to do some of these problems. Okay, let's look at the next couple problems. I want to find X and I want to find one of the missing measures of the angles. Okay, I'm working with these two angles right here. Now, with angles, the only two things that we need are, we know our opposite angles are congruent or consecutive angles are supplementary. So these two angles right here are consecutive because they're next to each other. So the equation we want to set up for this one is that they are supplementary. So that means this is going to add to 180. There's your equation. Once you have that, let's solve it. So let's combine your like terms. So 35 plus 5 is going to be 40. Minus the 40 from both sides. If you do that, you get 140. And if you divide by 14, you're going to get X equals 10. So there's my X. And then it also asks me to find the measure of angle T. So this is T. So let's take that X and plug it in for X here. So 14 times 10 plus 5. You can type all this out into your calculator if you need to. That will give me 145 degrees for T. Okay, what I would say at this point is pause the video, try the next 3 problems on your own, and then you can come back and check your answers. Okay, so let's look at this one. So these are the two angles that I have. Notice again, these are consecutive, so they're next to. So that means these are going to add up to 180 again. So my equation here is going to be 80 plus 11x minus 10 equals 180. Okay, solve for x. So let's combine our like terms. So 80 minus 10 is 70. I'm going to go ahead and minus 70 from both sides. So if I do that, I get 11x equals 110. And then divide by 11, so I get x equals 10 here again. And then this time I want to know the measure of angle W. But notice angle W is right here. I don't know what that is, but there's a couple ways you can do this. If I know this is 80, these two angles are supplementary, so they have to add up to 180, so that means this one has to be 100. Let me erase this and let's try the last two at the bottom. Okay, this one here. So let's look at our angles again. So I have this angle and this angle. These are supplementary, so that means they're next to each other, so they add up to 180. So my equation is going to be add them together equals 180. Okay, let's solve for x. Combine your x's, so it's 17x. Combine your numbers. This is going to be minus 41 equals 180. Okay, add 41 to both sides. 17x equals 221. And if you divide by 17, you should get x equals 13 here. Now the question here is find this angle right here. But notice I don't have this angle. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. I don't have either of these numbers either. So you're going to have to take this x and plug it into one of these. It's up to you. I'm going to use the idea that these two angles have to be the same, right? Opposite angles are congruent. So if I could figure out what angle G is, then that's going to be the same measure for angle E. So I'm going to take the x equals 13 and plug it into 7x minus 8. So 7 times 13 minus 28, is going to give me 63 degrees. So that's what this is. 63 degrees is this angle right here. So that means angle E has got to be exactly the same because they're opposite. Okay, last one. So now this problem, I have angle A and C. Notice these are across from each other. So what I would do is once you figure out what two angles you have, look at your angles. Are they opposite or are they next to each other? I know opposite angles are going to be congruent. So congruent means they're equal. So this one, you are going to be setting them equal to each other. I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 2x first. Then I'm going to go ahead and add the 7. And then divide, so I will get x equals 4. Okay, now let's see what we're looking for. We're looking for measure of angle D. Okay, I don't have D. If I knew what this one was, I could say that they're the same, but I don't have B either. So I'm going to need to find one of these angles. It doesn't matter which one. Let's go figure out what angle A is. Okay, so I'm going to plug that 4 back in for x. So if I did 2 times 4 plus 5, that's going to give me 13. So what I just figured out is that angle A is 13 degrees. Now I'm trying to figure out what D is. But again, think about, are these opposite or consecutive? So look back at the previous page if you need to. Those are consecutive. Consecutive means next to. And what do we know about those consecutive? They are supplementary, so they add up to 180. So that means if this is 13, these two have to add up to 180. So 180 minus 13 will give me 167 as the leftover.